Support for this episode comes from Stacy Olson, leadership coach, speaker, and author of Your Balanced and Bold Life: Work Less, Live More, and Be Your Best. Stacy helps busy professionals, especially working parents, create more balance and less stress as they juggle work, parenting, and self-care. Having experienced burnout herself while managing a corporate career, marriage, and 3 kids, Stacy shares relatable stories and practical tools to help you reclaim control of your days. I loved this book, and many of my listeners have found it to be a game changer. I'm also excited to share that it's now available as an audiobook. If you're anything like me and love a great audiobook, don't wait. Get Your Balanced and Bold Life on Amazon or visit www.stacyolson.ca. You can find the link in the show notes. When we finally learned and accepted that a big piece of Addison's sleep puzzle was getting her to bed by 7 p.m., I really had to grapple with a lot of mom guilt around not being able to spend very much time with her or with Ainsley in the evenings between getting home from work and bedtime. Today, I'm going to share how I was able to overcome, or let's say ditch, what I like to refer to as my working mom bedtime guilt. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of 2. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. Up until Addison, my oldest, went to kindergarten, I didn't get home after picking up the girls from daycare until about 6 p.m. And after we finally solved Addison's sleep puzzle when she was nearly 2 years old, I knew that for her to stay well rested, she really needed to go to bed at 7 p.m., not 8 p.m., like we had been putting her to bed for the first 2 years of her life. In fact, both of my girls really thrived with a 7 p.m. bedtime. That meant that I had a 1-hour window to get the girls out of the car with all of their daycare bags, to get them settled inside, to make dinner, and to give them a bath and do their bedtime routine and get them in the bed. With practice, we learned to do that pretty smoothly most days. But that meant that there wasn't much time for what I would say just hanging out. Once I got them home in the evening, we were really moving through those evening steps or routines. And candidly, I initially struggled to accept that this was our new reality and it was going to stay that way for several years. Of course, I wanted to spend more time with my girls after a full day at work and after they'd had a full day at daycare. And sometimes I found myself wondering if these evenings were too structured and if it was really worth it to keep this bedtime a priority. During those first few months of implementing this early bedtime, I ended up spending a lot of time reflecting on what I now call my working mom bedtime guilt. I read books, as you know I do. I connected with other working moms, and I journaled. I basically tried to slow down and get curious about my feelings. And I'm happy to report that I found a way to turn that working mom bedtime guilt voice way down. It started with me thinking about what I really wanted most for my girls during this season of life. I'll call it the daycare season. And I decided it was for them to be loved, happy, and healthy. Those were my 3 big priorities. And I basically had a bit of what I call a mindset shift around each of these 3 priorities. And that's what I want to share with you today. But before I do that, I want to be very clear that these are things that helped me. And part of my process in shifting my mindset was reading about and hearing other moms' stories and listening to their perspectives and how they approached being a working mom. But I certainly didn't relate to every story I heard or agree with every perspective or approach that I was told about. They didn't all feel right for me and or my family. But by hearing about different ways that other moms found joy and balance in being a mom while pursuing a career, I was able to decide how I would be able to find joy and balance as a working mom. I believe with every fiber of my being that there is no one right way to approach being a working mom. So consider what I'm about to share as something that you can take as food for thought. This is not me telling you that this is how you should think about being a working mom. Only you know what is best for you and your family. Okay, now, as I mentioned, the first thing I decided was that my goal was for my girls to be loved, happy, and healthy. And I'm going to share one mindset shift I had around each of these areas, specifically as it relates to my working mom bedtime guilt and these three areas. I'll start with my girls being happy. During those first 2 years, when we were putting Addison to bed at 8 p.m., she did not sleep through the night, and she often started her day at 5 a.m. When we solved her sleep puzzle and she was sleeping 7 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., I was obviously spending far less time with her in the evenings, and that was a major bummer. But I had to acknowledge that she was a much happier child when she slept 7 to 6:30. And when I had some time to regroup in the evenings and sleep all night myself, I was a much happier and more present mom. And when I actually took time to think about it, I realized that the quantity of time I spent with Addison definitely had decreased, but the quality of that time had significantly improved. When we were all well rested, the quality of our time together in the mornings improved. And so did the quality of our time on the weekends. We were all able to show up as the best version of ourselves for our weekend time together. And that really made me, my husband, all of us happy. That was a lot of our time. And we were much happier versions of ourselves when we were able to keep them rested during the week. So I was able to shift to focusing on the quality of time I spent with my girls more than the quantity of time. And that was all around the priority of my girls being happy. And early bedtime played a role in that. Now, let's talk about my mindset shift around the priority of keeping my girls healthy. Frankly, this one is a little harder for me to articulate, and I had to really think through it because I don't know that I've actually tried to articulate it before, but I'm going to give it a try. When I thought about keeping my girls healthy as one of my priorities, I realized it had become very clear that sleep played a big role in Addison's health. Addison had toddler asthma, and it felt like she caught every bug going around daycare during those first 2 years. Once we had her getting her optimal amount of sleep, the amount of illnesses she caught at school very noticeably immediately dropped. And when I really stopped and thought about it, I realized that I did not want her health to be negatively impacted because I was working and she was going to daycare. I thought about all the sick days she had during those first 2 years and the working mom guilt that often crept in during those sick days. And I have to say, that guilt wasn't so much around the fact that she was sick, because all kids get sick. It's part of growing up, whether it's at daycare or when they start school, they all get sick. So when I was thinking about it, it wasn't really just around the fact that she was sick. Generally, I guess I'd say I'm okay with kids getting sick from time to time. I think it's part of being human. But the guilt that I was grappling with then was more around the fact that she was sick so often. And I felt like she was sick more often than many other kids because I was working. So it was kind of this different type of working mom guilt. I was working, she was going to daycare, she was getting sick a lot. And I realized that I could turn that guilt that was around frequent illnesses way down by doing everything I could to keep her immune system strong. And sleep played a big part in that. It played a big part for both of my girls, but Ainsley slept well prior to starting daycare. So it felt much more intense and extreme with Addison because Ainsley didn't get as sick as Addison did because she was sleeping well from the get go. And just knowing that Addison's early bedtime helped her avoid some of the daycare illnesses and helped her recover faster from the ones that she did catch, helped me think about the early bedtime as a way that I was actually prioritizing her health, both of my girls' health. So that's the mindset shift I had around health as it relates to the early bedtime. And this brings me to the mindset shift I had around limited time in the evening with my girls as it relates to them being loved. Obviously, I knew that Mike and I loved our girls more than anything in the world, and that's why I had been feeling guilty about not having more time to love on them in the evenings once we were putting them to bed earlier. They spent a lot of hours at daycare. And let me tell you, I had spent a lot of time visiting and ultimately choosing a daycare long before Addison was born. And when I thought about the nearly 2 years that we'd spent with the daycare, when I was really working through this working mom bedtime guilt, I realized that my girls were loved on all day at daycare. In every classroom that each of them had been in during those first 2 years, I felt that they were loved. This is not to say that I didn't have moments of frustration with a situation or even a care provider at their daycare, because I certainly did. And I don't know that I know anyone who's had a child in daycare who has not had moments of frustration or angst. But I can honestly say that in each room, there was always at least one teacher or care provider who I could tell held a special place in her heart for my daughter that was in that room. I felt it. And I knew that my girls felt it too, because don't we all know? So they weren't just loved on by Mike and me in the morning before daycare and in the evening before bedtime and on the weekends when we were home with them. They were loved on all day. The daycare was part of our village that loved on our girls. So that really helped me shift my focus to thinking about all of the love that my girls were receiving, not just the love from Mike and from me. So there you have it. That's how I shifted my mindset around early bedtimes and ditched my working mom bedtime guilt. If you've been struggling with guilt around how much time you spend with your child or children in the evening after work, I hope this episode gave you some things to noodle on as you find the best way to turn that guilt feeling or guilt voice down. And as I was preparing for this episode, I found myself wondering if I should share how I've approached deciding when to put my foot on the gas in my career, when to put it on cruise control, and when to completely shift gears. If that's something you'd be interested in hearing about, let me know. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. My handle is @Sleep and Wellness Coach. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with another working mom who might need a little pep talk around working mom bedtime guilt. I'll see you back here next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.